Church's newly vigorous opposition to state execution. She travels around the world giving talks about her ministry. She considers herself a Southern storyteller. Sister Helen is a member of the Congregation of St. Joseph. She spent her first years with the sisters, teaching religion to junior high school students. Realizing that being on the side of poor people is an essential part of the gospel, she moved into the St. Thomas Housing Project in New Orleans and began working at Hope House from 1981 to 1984. During this time, she was asked to correspond with a death row inmate, Patrick Saunier, at Angola. She agreed and became his spiritual advisor. After witnessing his execution, she wrote a book about the experience. The result was Dead Man Walking, an eyewitness account of the death penalty in the United States. It became a movie, an opera, and a play for high schools and colleges. Since 1984, Sister Helen has divided her time between educating citizens about the death penalty and counseling individual death row prisoners. She has accompanied 6 men to their death. In doing so, she began to suspect that some of those executed were not guilty. This realization inspired her second book, The Death of Innocence, an eyewitness account of wrongful execution, which was released by Random House in December of 2004. Sister Helen is presently at work on another book, River of Fire, My Spiritual Journey. So without further ado, let us welcome Sister Helen Prejean.
I love coming to California. Now we have our culture too in Louisiana. You know, we got Duck Dynasty and the Swamp People and some Energizer Bunny Catholic nuns working to end the death penalty in the United States. And that's why I'm here with you tonight. One little piece of happy news, I got a little correction on the prices of the books. It's $15 for one, and for you, $25 for two. We already.
If you want to do that.
Oh, those that already got, or you can just consider it a contribution. Look, not as good as this. In fact, you know, all the help for our ministry we need to get. I don't know if you know anything about Catholic sisters in the Roman Catholic Church. You know, we are not the highest paid people. So we get support from the people as we always have. There's nothing new there. And so when you go to get the books tonight, if you want to kick in a little more, feel free. Or you can go on the webpage, the sisterhelen.org webpage. It'll give you other opportunities. Well, first, to just see the work and to get it. The microphone's on the floor. And y'all were still hearing me? All right. That roaring star, let us begin. Shows God can use anybody, right? Well, I have, it's just been such a journey of grace, of waking up, enlightenment, of this incredible. Here's my image. It's like you're going along in your little boat on the river, life. And a big old wave just wells up. And you're riding that wave in your little boat. And the wind is whistling through your hair. And you're coming alive in ways you never thought you would. Interesting that in Aramaic, Jesus didn't have a word to save. All the words were about life and coming alive, not being half dead, but coming alive. And that's what happened to me. So the first part of the story of Dead Man Walking, this spiritual journey, which continues, was about waking up to the gospel of Jesus, that I wasn't just called to be a nice nun that didn't beat kids around with a ruler, being charitable to people, being kind, especially to people around me, but to do justice, which meant awakening from the suburbs of New Orleans, the inner city of New Orleans, where 10 major housing projects, over 50% of people living in poverty, African American people. That when I was growing up as a young girl in Baton Rouge and went to Sacred Heart Church, I never questioned once that black people had to sit on the back of the bus, that black people had to sit in a special place over to the side in Sacred Heart Church, that black children couldn't receive their first Holy Communion, which symbolizes, it embodies the oneness of the body of Christ. Never questioned. The only African American people I knew personally were Ellen, who worked in the house with Mama, and Jesse, who worked in the yards. Just like that book and movie they are. And Mom and Daddy were always kind, and we were always respectful. But I never questioned that when Ellen would go visit friends, she had to ride in the back of the bus. Or the people who came to the theaters in Baton Rouge, they had to sit up in the balcony and couldn't sit with the white people. And that's what culture does. See, culture says, honey, look, that's the way we do things here. And it's better that the races are separate. Because people tend to fight now. And they're going to want to go to school with us, and they're going to want to marry us. I mean, for a long time, it was against the law for an interracial marriage in Louisiana. I mean, all this stuff it just comes with being born in a particular region of the country. And so when the waking up happened about the gospel, that the call of the gospel of Jesus is not to be a polite society to each other, right? Not only just to be kind to those around us, but as our Pope Francis is showing in a million different ways. If you never believed in the Holy Spirit of God before, or that there could be a miracle in a moribund institutional structure built around all kinds of just impossible things, really, where you don't think there's any life, then out pops a Pope Francis. And he's going to the prisons, and every word out of his mouth is to the priests, to the bishops, to everybody, get out of those buildings. Go to where the people are hurting, where the people are in need. He's showing us how to do it. He's doing it. And so that waking up to the gospel happened in me, and I've been resisting this thing that nuns ought to get involved in social justice. At first, we had this roaring debate going on in the community, like what's our ministry supposed to be with the people? And I was in the spiritual camp, see, and we get up to debate, and because I was doing retreats, and I was saying things like, well, is the forehead God that had everything? I mean, Jesus said, not by bread alone do people live, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. All you got to do is teach poor people about God. And I don't know any poor people. I'm like the little girl that time that wrote that essay called The Poor Family. And she says, there was a very poor family. The mother was poor, the father was poor, the children were poor. The gardener was poor, the chauffeur was poor. It was a poor family. I could have written the daggone essay myself before I woke up. And of course, and then you hear people say, why don't those people go get jobs? Don't those people know education is the way you get out of poverty? Why are they littering all around? That place looks like a mess. Why those people? And when I woke up, it was a great grace to wake up. And when you look at all the spiritual traditions, enlightenment is never something we can assure ourselves. I can announce I'm going in a cave and I'm going to fast and I'm going to pray for 40 days and 40 nights. And when I go into the cave and make my little announcement, I may announce I'm going to come out skinny. But one announcement I cannot make is I'm going to come out enlightened. Because when we wake up to something deep and profound in us, and wakes us in the spiritual core of our being, that it changes the trajectory of our life. It's always a gift. And all we can do is be thankful. I'm still thankful that I woke up. Still thankful that I'm waking up and keep waking up. And so it led me to move out of the suburbs and all of the stuff I was doing into the inner city, St. Thomas Housing Projects. And there's this wonderful sister, Sister Lori Shea, who had started Hope House there, who was awake long before me. And that was the first kind of realization. Hey, there are a lot of other people that woke up before me. I was awake a little bit. And you're always standing on the shoulders of others. And she said to me, Helen, you don't have to have a blueprint in your back pocket about how you're going to obliterate poverty. Just be neighbor. Sit at the feet of the people and listen to the people. And boy, did I learn. African American people became now my teachers. From the young black men in the neighborhood, what was happening with the police. I wasn't scared of policemen. If my car broke down on the side of the road in the middle of the night and a state trooper pulled up behind me, I wouldn't have been scared. Every young black man in the neighborhood had a problem with the police. And when I did research for Dead Man Walking, I found out there were more complaints to the Justice Department about police brutality in New Orleans than any other city. And when I lived out in the suburbs, that could have been in Calcutta. It could have been anywhere because I was disconnected. I was separated. I wasn't there. And when I couldn't see the suffering, it could have been anywhere. And so I learned what it meant not to have health care when your child is sick and you got to go to charity hospital and you got to sit in those plastic chairs till 2 in the morning when some young intern is going to come and be learning medicine from your shivering with fevered child. And all that mama can do is sit there and wait. Because you don't have health care. And think of it in this country. The millions of people who still do not have health care. Somehow we've worked it out in our minds that they either didn't work hard enough for it, or they don't deserve it, or this is just something that never just given as a human right, the right to health care. And then I saw kids coming from the public schools into our adult learning center who had dropped out to get their GED and got my next shock. And here's a kid who was a junior in high school. He had 1 more year to go. And I said, well, look, Ed, we're going to work with you on an individual basis. So let's just see your reading level and your math. You were junior. You're going to graduate in a year. And he could not read a 3rd grade reader. And we were all reading stories about the public schools among poor people, where poor people have to go. And of course people with needs were, I was part of the Catholic school system in New Orleans. We have a big Catholic school system. High school, elementary school. And so you have like a 2-tier system. And the people with resources and money can get a good education for their child. I'm a product of a good education with the sisters in St. Joseph and St. Joseph Academy in Baton Rouge. I didn't have good public speaking by the time I was a junior. I learned leadership. And I could read any book or critique it. And when I went to write a book, I knew how to write. And even where to put the semicolons. That's no small thing. Of course, I cut my teeth in teaching in junior high with middle school kids. So you want to have fun is just teach 8th grade boys. Grammar. That's a hoot. But actually, there's something about teaching that I love, and you can always have a good time. When you get out of work, you got to do the real stuff. But if you can't enjoy each other, you might as well hang it up. Right? So there I am, learning everywhere I look. And then, because I was ready for the lives of the saints, see, we read the lives of the saints when we're ready for them. I read the life of Martin Luther King. I read about Dorothy Day, who started the Catholic worker houses in New York. When people were hungry in the soup kitchens and the place for homeless people. And being where the people are hurting, where the people suffer, it's dire. In fact, tomorrow when I go to San Francisco, I'm going to a Catholic worker house in San Francisco. We'll be spending the afternoon with them, then do it again at night to do a little fundraising for the work. I'll get to meet the people. And something just comes so alive with me. Because we've heard the gospel stories for so long. You know, I was hungry, you gave me to eat. I was in prison, you came to me and all. And in Hope House, we were doing it. So people were coming, they needed a place to stay. They were homeless. People were coming, they needed food. People were coming, they couldn't pay their utility bill for their rent. People were coming and coming and coming. And then I'm meeting these great young lawyers who had gone to law school, who studied poverty law, and are in there with the Tenants Association, with the housing authorities and laws, to help people organize for their rights as tenants. I mean, Miss Eva, in her apartment, she's 79 years old, in a wheelchair, had had a leak in her bathroom for a year, and couldn't get the housing authorities to come and fix the leak. And I began to learn the difference. My dad is a lawyer, a successful businessman in Baton Rouge. And Daddy'd be on the phone, he'd call the local plumber, he'd have the plumber there the next time. You need something done, you get somebody to come, you get agency, ability to get stuff done. Knowing where you got the resources to go get it done. Poor people wait. And there's the attitude of it. What are we doing in public housing anyway? I'll still get a job. And here these young lawyers coming in there and you're having these meetings. And this is the first time I learned that the law, that you can be of service to the people through law. And I'm going to learn this par excellence with lawyers who are going to take these death row cases, even of innocent people, and work 20 years to try to get them off, or 20 years and then have to sit there while the state kills their client through execution. We're talking life and death. We're talking suffering. We're talking about injustice. With race tied onto it and against poor people. And until I was there, it was like something you had heard or you see something on TV, but it could have been anyway. And so when I'm reading the Lives of the Saints, now I'm reading Gandhi. Now I'm reading about what nonviolent resistance really means, how it's not passive and becoming everybody's doormat. I believe in passive nonviolence. Walk openly. You may have thrown t-shirts with footprints across your chest. It means being active, a force, a soul force to work for justice. And so from Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and I began to keep a journal. And I'm trying to tell the stories of what was happening to the people. And they're going, why don't they get a job? Those people love to be on welfare. They're too dependent. We got to cut the welfare. And Reagan had just come in, and he was cutting welfare like mad. And he was running for president, telling about these stories of the woman on welfare driving a Cadillac. And so people go, oh man, these people are ripping us off. They are ripping us off. All these people on welfare. And I know the real people. And I know the people, some are holding down 2 jobs and just watching these mothers with their kids and their wives everywhere. Children being shot through the window with drive-by shootings. Sister Lillian said, we need to start planting trees or something for all this is. We're being killed here. Every time a gunshot, a mom going to the door, where's my child, where's my child? And say to me, sister, we can't afford to move to another part of town. We can't afford houses in another neighborhood. We're forced to live here. We might go on a reservation. We gotta live here. We don't have a choice. The kids have to go to the school. And it was the suffering. And then seeing injustice of the system that was causing it, that changed my life forever. You can't stay neutral. You can't stay neutral in something. And so when I'm trying to tell the stories, and that's when I learned to write. And I learned to write like a journalist. And the key rule of journalism is show, don't tell. Don't hang labels on people and say racist, or greedy. Just notice what they're saying, the jokes they tell. Just picture them, bring them, make them come alive. I have a friend who works at the New York Times. Some people call him the conscience of the New York Times. His whole role that he does as a journalist is to put the faces on people of our social policies in this country. And when it was Welfare to Work, we followed the stories of free women and their families for a year and a half, and then wrote about it. His name's Jason McFarland. He was one of my teachers. We were learning together because he was covering the crime beat for the Times-Picayune. And so a friend of mine at the Times-Picayune, Jim Hodge, we put together this little newspaper called Flambeau because at the Mardi Gras parade, it was African American people that carried a line torch for the night parades. And so we called it the Catholic Voice for Justice. And I learned how to write. I learned how to write stories of people, telling real stories of real people. Because statistics, after a while, can just numb you. And even Stalin said, if you kill one person, that's murder. If you kill 1 million, that's a statistic. I mean, statistics blur us or numb us or whatever. Though we need them. But if it isn't personalized, and so here I am then in the St. Thomas Housing Projects at Hope House, and it's just an absolute fluke. I call it sneaky Jesus. I'll give talks in some school, they stick it if you turn up with it. Sneaky Jesus. Because this thing of writing that letter, that death row inmate, that happened at an early age. He hadn't had an execution in over 20 years in Louisiana. But I'm going to write a letter to a man on death row. I never dreamed they were going to kill him, much less that I was going to be there. I thought I was only going to be writing letters. So that's Sneaky Jesus Part 1. Sure, I'll write a letter. I was an English major. I could write something that's letter. Just a little poem or something like that. I'm just writing, and then we'll have a little correspondence, me and the person on that road. And you start walking down a little path, see? And so you just send that letter out. Letter comes back. Send another letter out. Letter comes back. And it comes back. And it comes back. But it happens through the counter. And he didn't even ask me to come. Patrick Sonia. He didn't ask me to come. He didn't ask me for a dime for a cup of coffee. He was so glad somebody had found him. He was writing these letters. He wasn't absolutely alone. And I was praying for him. And I found out through the letters that he didn't have anybody to visit. And so I write to him. Sneaky Jesus Part 2. I could come see you sometime. And in the return mail, all the visitor forms, he was so excited to get a visit. I mean, when you're in a death row cell, 6.5 feet by 8 feet, and you get 1,000 signals a day that do nothing but disposable human rights. And somebody says they're going to come see you. Just the dignity of a visit, that somebody must think I'm a human being or something, that they would come to see me. So all the visitor forms, and this was where the sneaky part came in, because he said, well, look, I'm a Catholic and you're a nun. Would you be my spiritual advisor? Spiritual advisor. I got no fellow I don't know that when the state of Louisiana is going to kill Patrick in an electric chair at midnight, right in the early morning hours of April 5th, 1984. At 5:45 in the evening, everybody else is going to have to leave the death house. lawyers, everybody except the spiritual. And I believe it. And I think if I had known that from the beginning, I could never have said yes. So maybe that's why Jesus needs to be seen. Hey, you want to do this one more thing? Would you come volunteer with us just to go over here? We're just going to go do this for a month. Can you do that? And you go. See, because it's in the doing. It's in the doing of it. It's in the growing that something can happen for them. And so I went with it. And I take you with me in the book of Dead Man Walking because I wrote it in present tense. So as it happens to me, it happens to you. You come with me. That first visit, scary, guards bringing in, doors clanking behind. We rounded the corner, me and this guard that had been through 3 iron gates already. And just see these red block letters right on top of this little green, a big green door. And red block letters, death row. And then he locks me in alone, says, I will get your name. And I'm waiting for Patrick, this man who went to letters. And then I started getting nervous about him. Because I'm thinking, you know, anybody can write nice letters, right? I mean, I never missed it with him. I just only 2 hours. Can you talk to him like anybody? Is his face going to look like anyone's face? If you nervous about it, your face you got eyes and ears or something. And of course, he was locked in a little boot type thing. He had this heavy metal blade between us. And I had to like pew through like that. And I couldn't believe how thin he was. Couldn't believe his face. And he was smiling and he said, you made that long drive to come to the end. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I didn't have to worry about what I was going to say. The 2 hours flew by. Next thing I knew, the guard was saying, man, time's up. It's going to be time for you to leave now. And I was leaving him. And I said, Patrick, I'll leave now. And the commitment was formed in my heart right then that whatever else was going to happen, I was going to be faithful to come and see. Because what he didn't need was one more broken promise in his life as I'm beginning to learn how to talk. Oh, yeah, we'll come see you. But fidelity. I'm in over my head. In the new edition of Dead Man Walking that came out, there's the afterword by Susan Sarandon and Tim Robinson. We worked together to make the movie. And they both standing after it, and the nun was in over her head. She didn't know what she was doing. And that's what attracted Susan Sarandon to the role. That she will never take the role of a woman who ends up as a victim. Now, a woman might get in over her head, and she may have to learn. But always, though, that's the kind of role that attracted her. She said, I could tell you that over here. And as I'm going to tell you the story, and the really big mistake I made was a big mistake. You're going to know what I mean. So anyway, after that first visit, so I was driving back, and I thought, well, he didn't even talk about what he did. I don't even know what the murder was. I don't know if he killed one person or 8 or what. So I did find out, though, in that first visit, that he had a brother, Ed, who had been in prison for 2 life sentences. And that was my first legal question. My first question was, how do you have a murder with no other eyewitnesses, only the 2 defendants, and one gets a death sentence and one doesn't? How does that happen? And in Pat and Eddie Saunier's case, it's more complex than this. But did you know in general, if there are 2 defendants and there is a murder and there are no other eyewitnesses, there's no way the DA can get a death penalty if he doesn't have 1 positive eyewitness to this. So it goes to both of them, the one willing to point to the other and say he did it. They get a reduced sentence for saying that, and we don't know from square one if we got the truth. That's how broken this thing is, and how arbitrary it is, and capricious it is in its application. I don't know any of that, of course. But I just, while making the 2.5-hour drive from New Orleans to the prison, I started visiting with both the brothers. I started visiting with Eddie. And there's a whole other story about Eddie that we could just spend a night together talking about. But basically, these two brothers came up in this broken home, no big surprise here, huh? Alcoholic father, a mother who had barely gotten past 8th grade. Both of them were barely passed or in 8th grade. So the educational level is low. That's true of all our prisoners in Louisiana. The United States incarcerates more than any country in the world. Louisiana incarcerates more people than any other state in the United States. It's a legacy of slavery. I mean, people are still living in poverty. None of that has ever been addressed adequately. And so we have the continuing poverty, lack of education. So what do? You build the prison system. And California really knows about this because nowhere more than in California have you had this amazing rise of the prison enterprise that has gone on in our state. But if you don't have a positive, vital program to deal with poverty and lack of education and the needs of people, it's going to be unnatural. 90% of people on death row were abused as children. The violence pumped into them, they're going to pump out on some other innocent human being, and then we're going to put them on death row for murder. I mean, I'm beginning to learn, and so first it was Patrick and Ed. And then I visited with them for several months. I'm going to wait till they trust me to tell me what they did. Because I would really have to trust somebody to tell me the worst thing ever did. But I went over to the Prison Coalition, and I said, could I just have some background information on this? And they brought out a whole stack of these folders, and I opened the one right on the very top, and looked right into the faces of these really young kids. David LeBlanc, 17 years old, the red boy, 18. And the headline, teenagers found murdered. And then the terrible story of the brothers, Patrick, Eddie, rabbit hunting in a field, both have 22 rifles. We're doing these things with teenagers who come here, this abandoned sugar cane field to park, a local lover's lane. Brothers would be waiting in the field. Brothers with this life of abject poverty and nothing and trying to look for their thrills. And some of the young women have been raped. There were 5 couples who came always to the building of that. Something happened that night. It was more than their usual. I mean, they'd approach the car, they'd say, we're security, we're the people, we work for the people on this lane, you trespass, you have to bring it to the owner, who will tell you what, if the girl has sex with us, we won't bring it to the owner, which is horrible in and of itself. Can you imagine the terror of the young people out there in the woods? Some of the young women had been raped, but they didn't say anything. They were scared to say anything. They thought the men would come and kill their parents or their siblings or who knows. Terror for them. And then this night, whatever happened, these kids are found lying dead. They've been shot in the back of their head. David, 17 years old. When the sheriff's department went to the high school with this part talking to kids who might want to kill David DeBlanc, even a kindergarten kid was saying, he played with us on the merry-go-round. Who would ever want to kill this beautiful young kid that everybody loved and who was already with such a big heart? But it was very clear who had done it, and there was no doubt about it. It's the 2 people that I have said I'm going to be the spiritual advisor to. It was Patrick and then there's Lady Sonia. They did this in the kids are found lying face down and they shot him in the back of the head. I mean, it's every parent's worst nightmare. And I can't believe the evil of it. And now that it's the two people that I have begun to visit World Company, and I felt guilt. So I thought, why can't they them? What am I doing with them? This poor parent. And this is where I made a really big mistake, because I thought, I really want to do something for this parent. But I'm not. You see, the kids go out to a football game, and you remember seeing them in the kitchen right before they left, and you visit them, and you never see them talk around them. I was just in the morning. I avoided the opera of living water. And there is a medley of sex tests where the victims' families are singing. You don't know what it's like to see your child go out the door, and the last words you say are about fixing the hem of the skirt, cleaning your room, get your coat. And if you have known those last words for the last, how you would have told your child how much you love them. Just this incredible grief, tragedy, so beyond anything I had ever known or tasted or known anyone who had gone through such suffering. So then when I thought of the parents, I thought I ought to do something. And then I thought, well, they're not going to want to see either. Because if you get on a seesaw around the death penalty, the victims' families see the death penalty as the way. And this is what they're told by everybody. They don't just bring this up. Everybody's saying, the DA is saying, yeah, we're going to get the death penalty for these people. And everybody's supporting them in that. This is the way you're going to show or get justice for your dead child. Nothing less than death will honor your child. Of course, we got to ask for the death penalty. Look what you suffered. And so anybody who is not for the death penalty will say, well, you're our enemy. You're against us. And I knew that they would, as much as just being in the presence of their pain, how every part of me would want to say, yeah, I agree with you on the death penalty too, that's the best justice for your child, and you couldn't do that. I just thought, I better just stay there. That's it. I didn't write him a note. I did not. Even to write a note to say, I'm sorry about your boy, I'm sorry about your daughter. No. Never. At the worst possible time you could meet a victim's family. Can you guess what that is? What? Anniversary? Well, the anniversary would be one that would be really one, but it was the pardon board hearing before Patrick was to be executed. Eddie had started out with a death sentence to the Supreme Court overturned it, and you have to read the book to get the details of it. And but in the pardon board hearing, that's the last thing before a person's executed, and all the victims' families are told. The victims' families are told, you make sure you're there with all your relatives and all your family. Because this is your last legal hoop you got to jump through to get justice for your dead child. So they're at the pardon board hearing, and I'm at the pardon board hearing with a lawyer to try to persuade the pardon board not to execute Patrick's son. And that's what I'm at, the victims. They got it in the film. I mean, you know, the confrontation outside that pardon board hearing. It's in the opera. It's in the book. It happened. And that, so we were walking outside the building while the pardon board was voting. And I rounded the corner, and there were the Borks came up first. The LeBlancs were next. The Borks had lost their daughter, Loretta. And I ran into them. The Borks were furious. Just livid. They just averted their gaze and walked by me in silence, and right behind were the boys' parents, Lloyd and Eula LeBlanc. And I expected and deserved the same thing. And Lord LeBlanc walked right up to me. And he said, Sister Helen, all this time, you've been busy for those two brothers. And you didn't once come to see us. You can't believe the pressure you're under with this death. I didn't know victim stories. I didn't tell that he was cowardice. You know, when I was working on the book, and I was working on it, I gave the first draft to my editor, Jason Enstein at Random House, and I downplayed this thing, not reaching out for the victim stuff. And he goes, well, Helen, that was a big mistake. And he said, it was cowardice, wasn't it? And, yeah. He said, look, when you write your book, don't downplay your mistakes and just go on the peak of the waves where you got it all right. Take people with you into the troughs where you got it all wrong. Because then they're going to believe you. They're going to follow you as their storyteller, that they know you're going to be telling them the truth. You're going to be credible. So here I am meeting this father, and he's saying this to me. You can't believe the pressure you're under. Later I'm going to find out what that is. But he said, Sister, I pray in this little chapel. Come pray with me. You need to come walk in our shoes. You need to know what the victim's saying. We were together with those two brothers, and I'm sure they present their best side. So that was an invitation I could not refuse. I said, I'll be there. Where do you pray, Mr. LeBlanc, and what time? Just tell me the time and the place. He said, well, from 4 to 5 in the morning in St. Martin Baptist Church in St. Martin, Philadelphia. I went, I'll be there. 4 to 5 in the morning. So I think I go to Baton Rouge, leave at 2:30, and you have to travel across this huge Chapelaya swamp to get over to southwest Louisiana, where Houma is, and Lafayette, where a lot of Cajun people live. And there, drive up 4 o'clock in the morning, standing outside this little church is where he kept vigil. It's a tradition among Catholics that you stay in prayer all night to pray for your needs, the needs of the community, the world. And I'm now down alongside this man. And we have a devotion in the Catholic Church of the Rosary, where you say the mysteries of the Rosary and remember the mysteries in the life of Christ and his mother. And it's on the Friday, so that's devoted to the passion and death and suffering. While kneeling alongside it, and we're saying the Rosary and going through the agony in the garden and all of that, and he's going through the passion and death of his only son. And he said, Sister, he's our only son. You and I too old to have another child. He said, our family name died. I know that. And I almost lost our life. We had a mutated grave where we had buried him in a family tomb in another little town. But still, you can't make it through a day without being by a boy. So we had to move David's body to the cemetery close to the house. So every day she came back. And so I'm praying alongside him, and he was the gracious one, because I'd done it all wrong. And he just took me in his heart and into his journey. And what a journey it is. He is the hero that we want. I'm just a storyteller, and I'll make the bad mistake. This man, first of all, he talked about the pressure. He said, everybody's saying to us, you gotta be to the death penalty, or look like you didn't love me for it. I never thought of that. You get the ultimate of all losses, and you're not going to ask for the ultimate punishment? What's wrong with you? He said everybody was saying, in fact, you and I even will go to Mass at different churches on Sunday to see if we can hear some priest get up and talk about the gospel of Jesus, because he knew Jesus had said about you, heard it 7 times. You, Jesus, had said to pray for your persecutors and to forgive enemies. That's the greatest love. He knew that. He couldn't hear it. And I wasn't there for him. And then he described for me a journey of his heart, of how, with everybody saying that to him, he said, yeah, I went there. I did. I said, they're right. I wish I could pull the switch myself. I want to see and experience pain for what they were doing to my wife and all of us, taking our son from us. And he said, I picture myself pulling that switch and seeing him die, seeing him in pain. Both of them. Wish we'd gotten both of them. And then he said up again to those words, that needs to be more. And he said, one thing you got to understand about me is I'm a kind person and I love to help people. And I always have helped people anywhere and I'm good with my hands. But everybody's saying, hey Lord, you fix this? When you come to my house, you're going to see lawnmowers and everything. Hey Lord, did you fix this? And I'll fix it because I love to help people. That's who I really am. I said, I was loose. And anger and bitterness is taking over. You know, and I'm sharp, I'm snapping at you, I'm snapping at everybody, I'm angry all the time. And then he did his hand like this, and I said, they feel about something, but I'm not going to let them feel me. And I'm going to do what Jesus said. And he said his face, he go down the road to you. He said, people think that Jesus is evil. I only did this not to give you what you condone it, saying it's okay. He said, it's not evil. He said, it was saving my own life. And I came to understand it. Maybe that is what Jesus said about why you love your enemies. It's so that the love and the integrity inside of us is not taken over. So that we lose our life. Maybe that's what. He was the first Christian friend I ever met that taught me that what forgiveness is about, first and foremost, is not about lifting the burden of somebody who's hurt. So it does do that. To forgive helps lift that burden of guilt from people who are hurt. But first and foremost, it was to preserve the integrity of love inside his own heart that he did not lose. I have had the grace, the incredible grace over the years, to meet a lot of victims' families and their incredible stories of making their way out from this unbelievable crucible of suffering and loss, which we can only imagine in our worst dreams. And they are the heroes for me. They are the ones who are the beacons. In the letter to the Hebrews, it talks about a cloud of witnesses. We have them in this country. They are all around us. These people who have been through these losses. And the need of the community. The shock I got, one of the things I learned from Lloyd was to go be with the victims' families and be there, accompany them, hear their stories. So I go to these meetings of people who had all lost a child or lost a loved one to violence. And every single one of them in the room would say, everybody stays away from us because nobody knows what to say to us. And so we started a group in New Orleans called Survive for victims of violence so that they could come together and be healed. And we in the community, you know, I always use that in the Christian symbol of the cross. There are two arms. And this issue of the death penalty stretches us into both of those directions. One, there's the perpetrator who did the crime, and what are we going to do to them? And then on the other arm of the suffering victims, who reaches out to accompany them? Who does that? Who in the community? And that we need to reach out. And that's the beauty of being in community, because one person can't do everything. Or be all the facets in the mosaic of life, and be the blue and the green and the yellow. but together we can. And so anyway, through Lloyd, he begins to take me down that path. And then on the other hand, there's this man on death row. This Patrick Saunier, and I'm his, and his brother. This man, who with his brother did that unspeakable deed. And I'm finding out the more I'm learning that it is a very complex story, and you can get into it for yourself. Eddie is actually the one who that night shot and killed those kids. But Patrick knew he wasn't innocent. Because he was the older brother who always kept Eddie cool. Eddie had a volatile flashpoint inside him, and he had a gun in his hand that night. And Patrick always felt responsible. He never used the word innocent about himself. And he was preparing himself for his death. And I have his Bible with the Psalms underlined and said, when they turn down the lights at midnight, because the death door is always lit, the guards have to be able to look at themselves, even to see if people are trying to commit suicide. The same thing wrong. I mean, in Oklahoma, last year, like 2 or 3 weeks before an execution, a guy got a hold of a bunch of pills and overdosed. They found him unconscious. They bring him to the hospital, walk his stomach out, get him back so they can kill him 2 weeks later. Or somebody with a major heart attack, bring him to the hospital, get him back. So the state, that absolute power over life that the state has when it comes to killing people with a death. And so here's Patrick, and here he is trying to deal with all the sorrow, remorse. Here is a man who felt remorse every day. It was like one of the guards at Angola told me he had never seen a man on death row who had more remorse than Patrick said. And trying then to make his way in this unbelievable, surreal thing of setting a date for your death, waiting for that date to come, and approaching that. And it's why when we will have a Supreme Court with ears to hear and eyes to see and a heart to feel, we will recognize that the death penalty by its very nature involves mental torture, because a conscious, imaginative human being anticipates what is going to happen and lives it inside his mind and in his dreams 1,000 times before. I mean, for our Supreme Court to say that here we have no cruel or unusual punishment. What could be crueler than to take a person, lock them up, and say we're going to kill you, and then approach it and then kill them? Or worse, there are 2 red telephones in the killing chamber. And there have been people on death row. Dobie, who's the first story in the death venison, he was brought to the killing chamber 3 times before they carried it out. He got within an hour of the death twice, and there was a phone call and there was a legal question, and they turned him around and brought him back to his cell for a month. Then he was back, saying goodbye to his mother, saying goodbye to his family, to go, and another question, facts from the Supreme Court, question. He goes back to his cell for a week, and the 3rd time he said, "Sister, I need it. I can't keep working on my courage to make that walk." So Patrick's going through all this. He's also, as we're going to approach his death, he's going to be brought, when you go through this process, waiting down the days. First they move you on to cell 1 on death row, on the tier where you are. So there can be a guard and looks in on you to try to prevent anybody trying to commit suicide. And then you're brought ahead of time to where the death house is. There are 4 holding cells on one end of the building. Then you're going to walk across a room, probably about as wide as this room. There's a white metal door they always keep locked, and that's where the execution chamber. And I've been inside your killing chamber the same way. And the gas chamber that you used to have has 2 chairs in it. Because you've had a number of double executions where people were gassed, which was the first method of execution. It was Ronald Reagan, by the way, who came up with the idea of the gas. So like that's what the Americans do, you know, when you put down now, and they used to use that for criminals. And you're going to see in this country, we move from hanging, which could be uncertain. There's a certain way you got to tie that noose and where you got to place it. And the left side, right back here on the neck. Or if the person's hung and it's not in the right place, it doesn't break their neck. And they're just twisting and gasping. And it's too hard on the witness. I mean, you notice this. You're trying to make it a seemly death. We don't want things to be unseen. That's why that execution of Clayton Lockett, where they're experimenting with drugs to put together to kill people, because the Danish company that made the main drug that they're using in lethal injection cut off the supply. And they cut off the supply because they found out what was being used to, for anesthesia and to help people in surgery and heal people was being used to kill people. And they said, you're not getting the drug anymore. So they cut off the supply in the United States, and everybody's been scurrying around ever since drug and experimenting. You can hardly have some test cases. Let's do this short. So they just put drugs together, and that's what happened to Clayton. Plus, we don't know the technicians, the people who are in certain veins. They finally had to try to put it in his groin, and then they had him covered with a sheet for privacy. They didn't know what was going in the veins. I mean, the man, for 51 minutes, is writhing and convulsing while he's dying. And then it divides people into 2 camps. Well, he's supposed to suffer pain. He ought to be suffering pain. Look what he did to his victims. Yeah, let him have some pain. And you've had Justice Antonin Scalia say the same thing. Seems the death by lethal injection is an enviable death next to what they did to him. Member of the Supreme Court of the United States, one of the Catholics. And, when the hearing came about these drugs and whether or not they were working, whether or not it really put people under, and he made a little joke, light conversation, like, well, slap them around if you're not sure they're really useful. Pain is supposed to be fun. Okay. And the more Christian the nation is, the more we support the death penalty. And you know why Europe doesn't have death penalty? They're not Christian, they're post-Christian. They call Freud. But not the people of California. California, no. But we have on our coins in God we trust. Anyway, we're a Christian nation. Christian. And unblinkingly calls himself part of the machinery of death. I know my fifth vote when combined with 4 others. Next executioner. He said, I'm losing the sleep votes. I guess my faith. There's so much in it. There's so much where religion has at least given its blessing of being used to legitimize the death penalty, and there has not been strong opposition from the religious community to work to end it. There may be some statements by leaders, and we've had those since the 70s. Every mainstream Judaism, every Christian denomination, leaders say they're against the death penalty, and the people accuse the same crime. Because if we don't get to the people, and if people don't understand this, and we don't organize to change it, we're all complicit. So there hasn't been leadership. And there was a terrible statistic in the mid-80s, because Pat was executed in 84, so I started getting active enough. That came out in the mid-80s saying the more people went to church, the more they believed in the death penalty. Now that's not encouraging for anybody who's religious. And it needs to be changed. Christianity has gotten so domesticated and so polite. Okay. It's like you go to church and, I'm a believer, But that radical fire of the gospel, where we call to be on the edges and with those who are suffering and injustices, that's the awakening that we hope happens in us. And then our young people that were part of where I was before I came here and this was gathering at the building and developing your faith so that you're really going to be the kind of person who lives in the midst of radical love in our society that's so calls for a love that does justice, that really counts. So anyway, I ended up being in the deck house and had to be going through this waiting process, 3 days, 40 guys, 2 days, 40 guys, 1 day, it's suddenly. When we were doing the movie, Susan kept saying, this is so surreal. So there's a guard appointment. There are 4 holding cells. There's a little tier. This is at the death house. And so the guard's out there. And so I walked in one time when I was going to visit with him, the TV was on. And there was a baseball game going on. And the guard was looking, and Pat was looking from the cell. And both these guys were in the game. There was this moment where the baseball games were over everything. And they both were like in it for a moment. Not a guard watching during the last hours. Because life as a way just then moment broke, came on the visit, and here we are asking for death. And his main worry was that his legs were going to fail. And also, as we began to talk with the hours, he said, look, Sister Helen, I appreciate everything you've given me. I never did know love. Figured I'd have to come to prison to find love. But you can't be there. It's somebody who's got electric chair, and you can be smart if you see it. Look, you just pray for me that God holds up my legs, but you cannot be there. And of course, he's trying to care. And I appreciate that. And I said to him, there is no way you are going to be killed by the state of Louisiana and all those faces that have come in there with those lips and be there to see you die. You're not going to make one step of love. I'm going to be there. And I don't know what's going to happen to me. Don't worry about me. Whatever happens. But you look at me when they do. And I had the strength inside me. You'd say, you okay? I said, I'm okay. Are you okay? And we were like holding up each other in midair. The only place of privacy I had was the women's room. All guys with guns, a guy with an AK-47 at the entrance of the death house, like somebody's going to come storm this. And they get so hyped up over this thing that it's taking of human life. But they're over. They're over the top with security, and here we were coming down to the moment, but I could go to the women's room, and it was private. And the movie catches it. You would see me going in there and putting our head against the tile there and just going, please, don't let him, please help him. But if he breaks emotionally, I was having a breath. I was going down, and there was no way I was doing it. It was terrifying. And there's a kind of politeness. Hey, Sonia, you want another cup of coffee? The guards, the prison psychiatrist said, hey, Sonia, you want to take the edge off of the paper? He wanted to be conscious. He wanted that. I mean, it was the last hours of his life, and he wanted to walk to his death. And calm himself to that. And the only way, I've been with some of our older sisters who have died. And when somebody's dying, they're fading, they're leaving. They're not talking, they're not moving. It's full of love. Drinking coffee, smoking, and talking. and watching the time. And the time was like no other. It was like stop, and it was like racing. And we made it through together. He helped me, I was there with him. And then the moment came, here comes the warden, right at midnight. It's just like, I remember thinking, but I was there with him. The whole focus is on him and to be with him. And you know, in the Bible, in the front where you have weddings and births and deaths, he wrote in the day of his own death. He said, "We are writing it in my own hand." He wrote in the day of his death. And he gave me his Bible and asked me to look after his little girl Star. And I told him, "You said, hey, Mary, you really are married to him." And his hands were handcuffed, so I wrote the letter that he signed. And it says, "Dear Eddie, you have to learn to control your temper in this crisis. And don't worry about it. I'm straight with God. I'm going to do it okay." And he signed that letter, "Your loving brother, Pat." And Eddie read that letter every night before we went to sleep for 3 years, so he could go to sleep. And the guards, he was brought to a cell by himself, stripped of his clothes. He was wrapped in a blanket because they wanted to watch him carefully. They didn't know what desperate act he might try to do because over not too far away in another part of the prison. And he knew he was the one. And when they let it come to the race of Patrick and the burial, and he walked in the funeral home and walked up to the casket, looked down and said, "Now 3 people are dead." The criminal justice system of Louisiana couldn't ever figure out who did what. And in the end, they got one of them that was enough to justice to be satisfied. They wish they had gotten both, but they got one. How does a brother make it knowing this and what had happened? When he told me himself about the moment and firing a gun, it's like I could tell that he wasn't trying to claim innocence. He was saying he did it, but the incomprehension of the deed, because with a gun, all it takes is this, just this physical act. But a person, a volatile person, is going bang, 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 and they're dead forever, and everything ensues from it. He's responsible. And so Eddie struggled with that, and he paid for it every day of his life. He just died recently. Suddenly, I was really glad about that. He had been there for almost 30-something years, and he was going to die there. And it is not a place where you ever want to be sick. And he would say, "Sometimes you don't know, sis." He would say, "How I'm thinking of just making a break for that fence, but it would just fall up. They'd shoot me, I'd be paralyzed, and I'd be in the hospital where you just die because you're going to take care of me." And he died suddenly at work. I visited him the day before. We had a really great visit. He was beginning to smile more. He was taking his punishment day by day and go. And he had a massive heart attack at work. The warden called him and said, "Just wanted to tell you again, son." Because I was just waiting. And I knew that he had this heart attack. And I knew they didn't have a clear resume. That they had him on the medication. It's terrible. You can't get that. And I said, "Please, God, don't make him stress. Please just let me." And right on out of there, right over by the incinerator crew. Eddie Sonia checked out. And he had paid some of the things for it. And actually, one of the horrible things that he found about the prison was what's called accounting. When you're in prison, they count you. They count you a lot. in prison. They count you 4 times a day. They count you before you go to work. They count you during part of work. They count you after work. They count you before you go to sleep. They count you in the morning. And they always mess up the count. You know, you get this camp, it's got to do with that camp. They mess up the count. Even while you're visiting, they call, okay, Oak 4, Ash 3, you know, the camps are named after the tree. They go up for the count. Do the count. The light goes back. Calm it. So Eddie died like at 12:20. And at 3 o'clock they do the count. Counts off the wall. And they do the count again. And finally one of the prisoners goes up to the guard and says, the dude is dead. And I went, Eddie. Of course, all the prisoners love Kool-Aid Moose. That is their move. Okay, Kool-Aid Moose, you know that, right? But I mean, the crime is unspeakable. The suffering of people is unspeakable. And now this man is dead. And it's when he said to me, Sister, please pray that I will put my legs as I make the wall. And the second book, Evidence, I talk about the direct dialogue I got to make with Pope John Paul to ask him, Your Holiness, does the Catholic Church only uphold the dignity, innocence, in the pro-life stances of the Catholic Church? Innocent. Well, when I'm walking with a man to execution, and he said, he's made completely defenseless. He's shackled, hand and foot, surrounded by guards, being taken over to his death, and he said, pray God that God holds up my leg. Where is the dignity of the step? Is it only the dignity of innocent life that the Catholic Church upholds? What about the dignity? And I urge you, and then I say in the letter, we need to have strong opposition to the death penalty. We need strong leadership. We need to teach the people about this. Because it's at the quintessential heart of what the gospel of Jesus is about. Are we for compassion or vengeance? What is love or hate? Life or death? And all that gets so crystallized when you're walking with a human being who is alive, and you know in this whole process already, they're going to put him in a body bag and they're going to take him out, and he's going to be dead. And another mother is going to bury her child. And what does it show us? And it's about us. People do terrible crimes. But how we respond and what we do is us. The fact that California has 744 people on death row, the largest in the whole nation, is about us. There's a factor in it too called politics, where it's driven by politics and people who make decisions to keep this in place because they think it gives them points with their constituents that they help on crime. But that is beginning to crack. And it's cracking across the country. And Prop 30, was it 34 or 38? 34, almost made it. I was zipping in and out of your state 7 and 8 times, coming to rouse people up to pass this so that California could end this, which is the only way you can do it, the way y'all set things up here in California. But so what does it mean? It means the people. It means us, the people. Us. We gotta do it. But to be close to it like this, and then to be with this man, and then there he is, and they're strapping him in the chair. There he is saying his last words of sorrow and remorse to the victims' families. And victims' families, sometimes you see them coming out of court buildings where their loved one has been killed and they go for the death penalty and they won, and you see them in a big, we won. and then follow those circumstances. 10 years, 15 years, here in California, so 20 years. And they wait and they wait. And what's the promise that has been made to them? That they will get to send a representative to be there to witness as the state kills the ones who kill their loved ones. And by witnessing that killing, that is a different thing. And that is, if we're looking for a way to legitimize the redemptive power of violence, what is more stringent than this? You watch us now kill the one who killed your loved one, and that is what's going to heal your heart, and that is what's going to give you closure, and that is what is going to enable you to honor your engagement. And it's horrendous, and it's unending, and more of them are standing to teach us. But in the end, I was with them, and as they strapped him in the chair, and if you see the film of everyone, and Susan and Tim worked with me on every line and scene of this movie. It could not have been a more collaborative film. Most authors, they do a movie and a book and they hate it. But they mess it up. No, not these two people. But they knew they wanted to do a film that was going to bring people to a much deeper level. Really go over into the victim's family suffering on the one side, and really go over into the crime and the perpetrator, and who also has a mother and a family on the other side, and that we are right in the middle. And all through this film, we are right in the middle, and we're being brought over to this side and to this side. And Tim explained to me that's what true art does. Propaganda means I know I'm against the death penalty, and I'm going to shape that movie all the way, so I'm going to have the audience with me coming out the other side that they're against the death penalty too. And he said, that's not all. That's propaganda. But we're going to bring the American people in, and because in my own story, and me in the middle, trying to get a hold of this, not understanding and making my way. And that's the story. And it's in the film, and it's in the novel. And Tim Robbins has written a play for that name walking that we're getting out to schools across the country, high schools and colleges, and the young people are taking the roles of people. So you're going to be the mother of the one who lost their child. Oh, but you're going to be the mother of the perpetrator who did the crime, and now you're going to have your last book. Oh, you're going to be the guard who's going to go in there and distract the men. Or you're the governor who's saying why you're not just all the people. And the schools that have done this play, every one of them has said, it has changed my life. Susan Sarandon called it vocation of acting, the force, and passion. That you get inside the skin and learn to all of it and become it for a while. Go there. It enables us to cross it of our own ego. So I urge you and encourage you to deepen your own journey in this. I hope my words tonight are a catalyst blowing on the coals of your own heart and your own desire for some justice and for us to be a light society and more about compassion and about legal vengeance in our criminal justice system. And that's just a lot to learn. I didn't know who scat about any of it. I didn't know about the law. I didn't know about the legal system. I didn't know how courts work. I didn't know who got it, who didn't, how race plays a part. Mainly, that's when white people deal with the black people. I didn't know any of it. So by reading, see, I really believe and come to understand the power of that reading. You're quiet and you read the book. You're not able to find you can go to the book place and put things together in a way that maybe you never have before. And then I can be of service to you and share my story in the book. So I offer that to you. And I'll be glad to sign books. How long we got the place?
9.
I'm really blowing the
So
timeline, man. I bet you. Do we
Yeah.
need to get out of here? We could bring the books over to where the
No, we have some time.
We have some time. All right. So could we have time for a few questions, conversation, comments? What do you think? Yes.
I guess questions about the victim's perspective. Were there multiple victims? I walked by the archive where there's 5 names of incinerated inside California. And the killers, the arsonists, is on death row. And then just recently there were 5 more families whose family members died in a car attack during a fire in San Bernardino in 2003. You've got 10 families. You've got the Salon and Seal Beach that have, what, 7 or 8 victims? That's a definite case.
So what do you think of when it's multiple victims?
Well, I'm just trying to reflect on ways to, where people, particularly people, they might approach that for an alternative to the death penalty. I think in Kansas City, and I was in Texas and Louisiana last month, and actually was at least Texas today. Someone was Texas. And I enjoyed the posters for the Angola rodeo and over on the Louisiana side of the store with it.
That's a very big span, that rodeo.
Especially for lack of culture. But, I was in Jasper at, at the Jamesburg Memorial Park. And then come to find out that, his killers are on death row.
First, I'm going to give a short answer to that long question. That was all good stuff. I mean, in Oklahoma City, 160 years. But if it's one, never mind. And then let's start multiplying the numbers. But if it's one thing, and we keep trying to do a designer thing so we kill more than one, we try to put the aggravated circumstances that we're doing with that person. And when a tragedy is multiplied like that, we just say, well, the thing is about us. If we can be safe without having to kill people, is that not the right option that is offered to us to choose? Yes.
2 observations talking about multiple deaths. Remember what happened in Norway? It was 70-some people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an answer. And the other is, you said, what does it take? Why do some people not kill people? Well, one thing that stopped the Brits from doing it is when they killed somebody and they found out he was innocent and it was a frame job. And they washed their hands and said never again.
Right. Europe has experienced wars on their own soil and they've witnessed the trials. And they're much more sensitive about giving government power. But like Norway, Finland, they said they're going to close the prisons. They have prisons as a place of rehabilitation, and people that have mental illnesses that are acting violently, you gotta deal with that. But it's so different. So here was a person who did that terrible atrocity, killing those 70 or whatever, and they're coming at it from a different mindset. We hold the individual responsible. We never ask the we question, the societal question of what is it, where is the violence coming from? And now let's get to that and deal with the root causes. Somebody else? You and then you.
I just want to know, you kind of spoke to it somewhat, but what do you think about the prison abolition?
So anyways, we can only go up. We're in a punitive society, and now prisons are a way that people can make money with the private industry companies. We have got to work to first of all, to stop all the heavy sentencing for things, felony for drugs, all that kind of stuff, sending young people to prison for life. And maybe one day we'll come to a place where we can understand that just like we recycle Coca-Cola cans, that maybe we could recycle people, that could really be places of restoration, maybe. I mean, we just have to move toward that day because it's so bad. And politics has taken over, and then the money is in it. And so we can only go up. Finally, one day, hopefully like Finland, we'll say, well, look, prisons are doing such a great job. of rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is really low down. We need to keep the public safe. There's no doubt about that. Doesn't serve that function. But I mean, all the ways that this politics is taking it over in money, it's unspeakable. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And they are clear that it's the purpose of the prison is rehabilitation.
Yeah.
I think we're pretty low.
Yeah.
Punitive, supposedly rehabilitation, and I think it's like a safety issue.
Well, safety, yeah. You never give people safety rehabilitation.
But maybe,
I mean, except in California. And of course, you have a massive prison system there.
I think you're right on. It's about us. What do they want as a society? And including
Yeah. In the back, and then up here in the back.
When you see, when you have people who change their lives, when you're not because you're really elected, what causes people to change their mind?
It's happening across the country, okay? It started happening in the year 2001. First of all, 144 wrongfully convicted people. The stories keep coming out, got the wrong one. Got the wrong one. Not only did we make one mistake or two, at least 144 times, and they just did this scientific study saying at least 4% of people on death row are innocent. And I know why. I tackle that in Death and Innocence. You have poor people, so they get poor defense, and it's not an adversarial way of coming to the truth at all. And so prosecution has all the evidence, prosecution, the politics, they go in for the kill, they get political points, and then they run for judge in Louisiana, and they brag about how many death penalties they get. So you have that, that's from the beginning. So it's broken. Truth doesn't come out. So the number of innocent people that have been released. And then we've been at it 30 years, and people look and they don't see a real practical effect. I mean, the states that practice the death penalty don't have a noticeable drop in homicide and violent crimes from states that don't. Like Michigan with Detroit or whatever. They don't have the death penalty. And roughly, the homicide rate is double in the states that have the death penalty than the states that don't. And generally, it's related to poverty, source of violence, dead in lives. So you tend to break the law more, you tend to do more drugs, you tend to get involved in things that break the law, and so all that's involved. So we haven't seen the crime rate go down. We haven't seen any practical effect of it over all this time. All the stories coming out about the innocent people. And now, and especially in California, the cost, it's so extravagantly expensive, especially in California, because you do it right. You pay the defense. You pay the expert witness. You pay everybody. A lot. I mean, there's no comparison to what they get paid in Louisiana lawyers that take these cases. And then you got all these people on death row, and you wait, so that's what Prop 34 was all about. The billions you spend to keep capital punishment in place. And so why not put all that into healthcare, education, you cut to the colleges, the universities, while you're building up the whole business. And cost is one of the things. And we've seen a rapid decline. Ford is the lowest now it has been since 1957. 60% in the population. And that's on what we call the up-down question, or you put the death penalty to the nurse and all. But when you give the alternative of life without parole instead of the death penalty, over 50% of the American public now recognize it. As long as we are kept safe, that is all that is important. It is not the punishment of death. And helpful, the young people of our country are the ones who are helping us with a lot of it and moving us forward. About the gay issue too, about the death penalty, about a lot of things. And they just did this poll of what they the Christian millennium. So that'd be young people born 80. Y'all, are y'all millennials? And so, and this was a statement they asked them whether they agreed with or not. Government should have the option to execute the worst murders. Every one of those words is important because the criteria of the Supreme Court is definitely only for worst of worst, not the garden variety ordinary murder. Yeah, and we all get to go try to figure out what that means. And among the Christian millennials, 78% did not agree with the statement. So young people are there. But the nation as a whole is beginning to wake up. So I can see the big difference that's happened, but it can't be. Because the deep South states that practice slavery do 80% of all executions. We're the real practitioners of death, and we always have it. And if we had a different Supreme Court who read the sign over their front door, equal justice under law, and they saw the huge geographical disparity of practice in this country, and as related to the 10 states that practice slavery, they would look and see that there's not a clear pattern of justice. And when you do a law, it needs to be predictable and at least even-handed in some way. And why this huge disparity? Maybe one other person. Did I get everybody else? Yes. Did you? Yes.
I worked closely with someone who is serving a 25 years to life sentence, who has been found suitable for parole 3 times in the state. Each time, Crime Victims United has come forward during the final 150 days, and the governor has overturned that. So my question is, what would you recommend that we do with respect to Crime Victims United and how to listen carefully to the people who are in that state who haven't yet turned the corner in the way that you described Lloyd having that?
No, that's a really, really hard one because see, crime victims, when they band together like that, they feel this is what they have to do to honor who their child has been killed or whatever. And so they see it as against the criminal, and that criminal should stay forever. That's the way you ought to. It's tough, and I don't know enough about the group, or I don't know enough about who knows this group, or who begin to work with the group and all that. Or are you talking about a hard road there? Is it a large group of people, or are they just a small group that are very local? And make it their mission to go to every one of the parole facilities.
And they have a history of being funded by the California Correctional.
Yeah. I get that. I get that. Maybe one other person. I'll get to books. We can continue talking during the reception. Yes.
You did hit on something that sometimes it takes a very, very long time to come to realization that you must forgive because it's not the person. That's what you're doing, you're killing yourself, not doing.
And that's a long road.
Yeah. It must come to you.
I heard one person describe it as you drink poison and hope it hurts him. Well, look, you've been wonderful. It's been great to be with you, and thanks for coming.